what you're thinking about it. I give you about 2.5 minutes for each of the questions, wrapping up nicely. Then we move on and see what others say about it. Please, tell us. Do we have 2 mics? You do have one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good morning once again. So the first question you did ask is why coin a challenge, triad challenge or triple threat. Now for Kenya, the overlapping challenge of new HIV infection, sexual gender-based violence, and adolescent pregnancy was as a result of examining the evidence, and which is the data. Prior to this, every sector was looking at the data separately. So we had people looking at adolescent pregnancies, we have other sectors, we are looking at sexual gender-based violence, and then also the HIV sector was looking at the new infections, especially among adolescents. But what was common about these 3 challenges, it's about 1, unintended sex. There was a lot of sex happening between adolescents themselves, and they didn't intend to have that sex, something that just happens. And it happened because both the girls and the boys weren't given proper comprehensive education. The other is unwanted, and this is forced sex. The girl didn't want to have sex, but she's been coerced, she's been raped. And of course, what was common about these incidents is that they were unprotected sex. So as a result, if you looked at the country, 2018, 427,135 girls aged between 10 to 19 had visited INC clinic, meaning they were pregnant. And that is when we started making noise. But we made a lot of noise during COVID, where we saw about 331,549 girls having dropped out of school. Why was this apparent during COVID? It's because the girls came home, and then everybody started noticing there are so many pregnant girls around us. And for us at Systemic Diseases Control Council, one lady just asked me and challenged me to visit one of the rural areas. And she said to me, I want you to go and visit a place called Homa Bay. Homa Bay is an epicenter of HIV in the world. The prevalence rates were so high, and it's one of the areas that we've been working for a long time to address HIV. And she said, I was going to meet girls walking from the nearest place, and she would bring about 200 girls pregnant. And that was really shocking for me. I said to her, I know it's the height of COVID, there's no movement, but I'll go there. And true to her word, when I went there, the girls came. They also came with their parents. But what was interesting is that even the parents were feeling helpless. The government was feeling helpless. The children themselves are feeling helpless. And so therefore we asked ourselves, what is the problem? Why is it that we can have such a challenge with such a magnitude, with such consequences that disrupt development, socioeconomic status of the family? Families were being broken, mothers being chased away from their homes because their girls are getting pregnant, and yet we all seem to have a challenge to address the issue. So then we coined that name triple threat and began to talk about it. And first we used data out there, data in the media, just to begin speaking about there is a challenge. And everyone looked around themselves. It's just about that something we all had decided it's normal. It was normal for us to have a 9-year-old in maternity. The nurses were traumatized. And when we went down to the maternity, we would meet nurses saying, oh, we've just been wondering when someone will see this, there is a problem. And then when you go to the prevention of mother-to-child transmission clinics, you're speaking to a child on how to prevent a child from getting infected. And then here we are, speaking about a 50-year-old who has defiled a 9-year-old, 10-year-old, and then it is normalized. The conversation ends in the police station. So how did we organize? We organize ourselves around existing resources. As you said, the resources we are constrained on resource. We said, what is the biggest resource we have? Is a human resource. We have administration department of government that talk about security. They tell us about cattle rustling. So we began to say, we want to work with the same people to tell us about whose child, because all these 400,000, 300,000 pregnancies are basically pregnancies that are defiled. It's just that we coin a nice name and call them adult pregnancies, but these children have been defiled. So we began talking about commitment instead of asking ourselves what? Who is committed? Who is responsible? Who is accountable? And this is why we then thought that the missing piece was the fact that no one had a sleepless night. Just because a girl has been raped next year. No one was having a sleepless night that a new infection is occurring as a result of this challenge. So in a nutshell, our commitment plan identified indicators that would allow multiple sectors to come in. And one of the things we also realized is that we have been leaving human papillomavirus behind. Yet we know that if this 9-year-old gets early sexual debut, what comes with it is HPV. What comes with HPV is cervical cancer. And now we were beginning to shout in facilities and say, oh, there's so many young girls who are having cervical cancer, what's going on? Yet we did not connect. So sexual debut became one of the issues. Sanitary towels, puberty, was all over the place. The girls said they were going for sanitary towels. We said, let's focus on that. And then the most important thing is 400,000 children are too many to be out of the school system. Return them to school. So those are commitments, but there are about 12 of them. And that is what you're working on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a comprehensive response. You really literally covered everything, including why they came to that decision. And also she went on to talk of how they really, during COVID, looked at the community, involved the community. That's part of that collaboration and some of the key strategies that they took to do that. I wish, with an expert like her, you need to give a full hour to expand this, because I see they're itching to come in and also discuss this issue from their perspective. So let me just move on to Mr. Amoji Trevor. He is the reigning Y+ King Uganda, a national youth leader, openly living with HIV, using his platform to challenge stigma, advocate for the rights of youth, young people at national, regional, and indeed at international levels. As a country youth coordinator for AHF Uganda Cares, he leads youth-focused HIV prevention and advocacy programs, empowering young people to take on leadership, as I was saying earlier, roles and advocate for their needs. Trevor is a passionate speaker and representative of young voices in high-level forums, as I said, even at international level, including Women Deliver and the Global AIDS 2024 conference. And he holds a bachelor's degree in social work and social administration from Makerere. Please take note, I'm giving our panelists time to just talk. You will get your chance to ask a few questions, but I'm trying to change how I was going to do it earlier to really make sure we are on time and addressing the issues here. So for you, Mr. Trevor, you've got lots and lots of experience. I have a few questions for you. Triple threat is seen as an issue impacting young women. What do you see as the main issues that we should be thinking about for men being engaged in addressing the triple therapy? I think that is a very critical question. And as a young leader living with HIV, how do you advocate for youth-friendly health services in Uganda? And what are the most pressing barriers? Again, briefly, these things are sort of linked. And maybe if you can you share a personal success story where you advocated for this work and contributed some tangible examples? I think ourselves, from speaking for myself, when I hear examples, it motivates me even more. So I'm sure the youth here will be motivated. Briefly, please, again, it's about 3-4 minutes so that we're able to move on and give others a chance to speak. Mr. Trevor.
Thank you so much.
I think you need to press it. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really hope my points are compressible.
Please compress. Please compress. Thank you.
Mambo vipi Kenya? Mambo vipi Kenya? I expected a louder response because the Gen Zs in Kenya, out of all the Gen Zs, yeah.
They're here, don't worry.
Yeah. So I'm very deeply delighted to have this very wonderful session here today. Triple threat is a term I'm hearing for the first time, but I think it's something that we should carry on, even in Uganda as we return, because when you look at the intersection of these, you see HIV is sort of a driver for SGBV and teenage pregnancies, because you find that these people are harassed, there's stigma and discrimination. You also see generally HIV, teenage pregnancies also leading to HIV. When the sex is hard, it is unprotected, which of course can lead to infections. So I will just go straight to my points on men, and I think that's a very, very important area that we need to touch on. And first say, if you just take a look at the room, this room, we have more women than men. We have fewer men.
Men,
yes.
Raise your hands, please. Let's see you. Where are you, men? Men. Hey, that's a large crowd.
Yeah, but my point is the health-seeking behaviors of men is much lower, and it is something that we really need to look at. When you look at the facilities, the people missing appointments are men. The people having late HIV diagnosis are men. So it is important that we encourage men to have healthy, health-seeking behavior, so that at the end of the day, they are able to, be at the right area when, so that they don't share the infection. And then looking at males as both the perpetrators and also victims is also really important, because on one end, men are actually, of course, on the largest end, the perpetrators of SGBV, but at the same time we have men who are victims. And you see, men who are victims sort of create a cycle of violence because they've been violated, and then, they create the cycle. So it's important that we address men's issues both as, victims, but as perpetrators, and involving them in these conversations. And I'm very glad that we have men also on the panel today, which really enhances what we are talking about. And then just looking at men generally as fathers, challenging harmful gender norms. There is there are cultures that promote aggressive sexual behavior, which is dangerous. And so we need to encourage men to have healthy relationships that promote consent, having proper conversations with your partner. If it is on condom use, can she carry the condom? And all these healthy, conversations. So I think men integration into these programs is very important, and encouraging them to seek services as much as the female counterparts do. Then I'll just go to advocating for youth-friendly services quickly because of time. Yes, so I want to say that I've done this both as an individual and as AHF, and I want to say it's a multifaceted approach. There is not really one side, but you're looking at the policy level and then also at the community level. So what we've done largely in AHF Uganda is getting into contact with these bigger bodies, these policy-making bodies. So for example, we are part of budget consultations. When the budget is, going to be passed, we are part of this conversation so that we can advocate for funds for youth-friendly services. And then currently in Uganda, there is consultation for a development plan. I don't know, the national development plan that lasts for 5 years, and it's the one that is sort of a roadmap for funding of the budgets. So what we do is we include the youth priorities in these plans, so that when these plans are the ones that inform funding. So if you have youth-friendly services, areas like CSE that have been mentioned, prioritized in the budgets, funding becomes easier. And then also being part of coordinating groups. Like for example, we work with the Ministry of Gender as well, just to ensure that even where conversations on HIV are not as vocal, we extend those conversations to those platforms and ensure that youth are prioritized on a larger scale. And then also central to my work, I would like to really speak about the Girls Act program. We have a program that is aimed at, briefly, that is aimed at reducing vulnerabilities of young girls to HIV infections. And so what we do in that program is that first of all, the main goal is to reduce risk to new HIV infections, but also to build the agency of adolescent girls and young women to speak for their issues. And so what we do is we've extended these girls and given them the power and the empowerment to speak on platforms for their own issues, because they have stories, they have experiences that statistics cannot relate with. So we want them to be the voices to represent their issues very well. So we've had them speaking on things like menstrual hygiene, a very, very important topic, comprehensive sexuality education, and we've seen a lot of impact when young people are the ones speaking for their issues. There is a lot of reception. The issues are more, you can relate with their feelings and emotions. So these are the different ways we have, tried to push for the services. And then speaking about what I have done as Mr. Y+, I want to mention that not so long ago we had a campaign in Uganda against HIV stigma and discrimination. For those who don't know the Y+ pageant, it is aimed at challenging HIV stigma and discrimination. And when you see me here, I'm sort of the face of youth HIV/AIDS activism in Uganda. And so my work is to represent the needs and the rights of young people. So we had a campaign, and it was in our language. So it was called Tonsolea campaign, which means do not discriminate me. So this campaign started online, digitally, but spread beyond, where we were targeting health workers that are discriminating people, targeting policymakers, people who don't understand HIV. And so this campaign caught fire because at the end of the day, we were having testimonies and success stories. I didn't do this alone, and it was funded by AHF, but we had a network, and young people were very interested in the campaign. We had people going for testing now. We had people saying, oh, now I understand what HIV is like. So we had an influx of messaging on HIV, right messages, to ensure that people understand what HIV is like, because we realized one cause of stigma is not knowing what HIV looks like. So we took it upon ourselves to explain, give facts, and there was a lot of success stories. I can't even mention the detail. But also having policymakers on board, because I remember during that time was when we pushed for people living with HIV to be in the army, for example. And we were very glad that on the World AIDS Day in that year, because we met the HIV/AIDS committee in Parliament, we had the president making a mention on people living with HIV in the army. And so we felt that it was a win for us, because so just because of time, I have a lot to share. But generally, it is for us to push and ensure that we end AIDS by 2030. Thank you
so much. Let's give him a big round of applause. The take-home message to me as I was listening, admiring how he was delivering and telling us what he's done, the confidence. The young people have such confidence, and we count on you to continue that, and making sure that indeed you are also promoting and ensuring that the young men are very much involved, policy advocacy, taking it upon yourselves as youth to push the agenda, but working with policymakers. Again, I cannot even summarize what he said because it's a lot. I did talk for our first speaker as being an expert in what she does, and how I wish we could have an hour. Now I wish we could have 2 hours so that the young men here can really tell us a little bit more. But it gives us confidence to say, yes, there's a lot that we can do, and that a lot is actually happening. So once again, I know we want to ask questions, but allow me to just move on so that we really give our panelists a chance to say what they have to say, and then we can ask a few questions here and there. Can we move on? The next one that I would like to bring on board is Mr. Rogers Goloba, a senior probation and welfare officer at the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development in Uganda, with over 17 years of expertise in child protection, adolescent health, and social welfare programming. He plays a key role in designing and implementing evidence-based interventions to combat sexual and gender-based violence and reduce adolescent pregnancies, contributing to a national policy as a member of the think tank on ending teenage pregnancies and the Education Plus Initiatives Technical Committee. Rogers is recognized for his skills in inter-agency coordination, resource mobilization, the very things we need, stakeholder engagement, driving policy reforms, innovative programs. We're looking forward to hearing that, in support of the vulnerable adolescents. Mr. Rogers, that's you. How does Uganda's Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development work with the health and education sectors to address the social and economic drivers behind HIV infections, adolescent pregnancies, and sexual and gender-based violence? That's number one. How can probation and welfare officers support rehabilitation and reintegration efforts for adolescent girls affected by the triple threats, ensuring they can return to school or find economic opportunities? Again, I lumped the two together because as you speak, those things sort of intertwine, and we really would love to hear from you, government. Over to you, please. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, and I'm glad to be part of the panel. First, I'll say that my passion for HIV and AIDS started when I was still an undergraduate at Makerere University. And I did a study on the impact of HIV/AIDS in the education sector in Uganda. And I was targeting rural primary schools where we had a lot of absenteeism of teachers and other service workers who were living positively with HIV. In Uganda, our partnership, our collaboration as sectors, I think is grounded in the human capital development objective, because outcomes for children and adolescents are shared across the key sectors, across health, education, and social protection. If not able to be healthy, to be highly skilled and productive, that means that sectors have to break the silos within which they work. If people, for example, are constantly ill, they will not work, and they will have to put a lot of pressure on empowerment from government under social protection. So our history of working together started much earlier, maybe in the early 90s, when we were struggling with one of the key outcomes for children, or key indicators, which was stunting. And that's when Ministry of Gender worked strongly with Ministry of Health to do an integrated nutrition program, because our stunting rates were higher than 37%. So that was the first time that sectors came together to work on one area. However, over the years, our partnership has grown much stronger, our collaboration has grown much stronger, because we now have more multi-sectoral policies, we have more sectoral collaborations for capacity strengthening, but also at service delivery level. On the triple threat, we work closely with the Ministry of Health, because teenage pregnancies or adolescent pregnancies has been one of the critical areas that has been pushing our maternal or pregnancy-related deaths in Uganda. And that meant that health facilities or health workers have to move from the health facilities to go to communities, to go to households, to do the engagement, to ensure that we curb teenage pregnancies. But also, we realize that in Uganda, apart from having a high incidence of HIV/AIDS amongst adolescent girls and young women, we also have a number of negative indicators. Viral load suppression among adolescents living with HIV is lowest compared to adults. Health-seeking behavior, that was already mentioned, is also lowest. But we also see cases of low completion rates. First of all, enrollment in secondary school is below 50%. Completion is also below 50%. So these are the drivers that we see nationally that we must address as key sectors working with adolescents and young children. So what do we actually look at? How do we work together? We work together in designing approaches to enable us to address the triple threat. And one of those approaches that I'll talk about across the board is health, where we do community service delivery models, where we pair a household, a number of households to a particular health worker. But not only the health worker, we also have a case worker, we have a frontline worker who is in the community. So these are able to track households where we have people living with HIV to support a number of things: prevention, care and treatment, which includes adherence, but also providing psychosocial support. So that is really important. The health worker cannot do all that because health facilities are overwhelmed with actually clients. So we have to work with someone from the community who is maybe from Ministry of Gender to be able to do that. The other is in education. We have a re-entry program, but school teachers or educators cannot be in communities looking for children to come to school or adolescents. So our work with our foot soldiers, with our community development officers is to ensure that every child of school going age is supported to re-enter into school and provided or linked to services to enable them stay and complete school. For the SGBV, we do a lot of work under case management, ensuring that we develop individualized case plans for adolescents. Adolescents cannot be reached in mixed group sessions with adults or others. So they need individualized care because they have their unique issues. So in our case planning, in our work with the judicial services, we ensure that we link to the health facilities. Our first point of contact is to prevent HIV transmission arising out of SGBV. So referring immediately to the health workers to do the PEP, to provide other services, trauma and counseling is really important. Lastly, our collaboration with health has enabled us to implement a lot of programs. We had a DREAMS program. We have an OVC program, which is a landmark program, which has contributed to reduction of HIV transmission or incidence amongst children and adolescents. First, we were targeting children, but we also extended now the years to 24. So we are able to cater for that. Lastly, is how do the probation officers work to prevent the triple threat? And I think probation officers are well placed because they are handling most of these cases. Can I continue?
Yes, yes.
Okay. We have to facilitate access to education for adolescent girls and young women. We have to facilitate skills because we have a very big challenge of the school to work transition. Our adolescents, our young people are leaving school and are not getting access to opportunities for employment. And that places them at a high risk because they need the money, but they do not have the access to that money. So we're seeing cases, for example, of transactional sex being high, and all these are risk barriers. But also see that our key population size is also increasing exponentially. So what is the role of the probation worker? Linkages, but also facilitating access to opportunities for adolescent girls and young women. Ensuring that now we engage with the private sector. We engage with the civil society organizations because public service cannot grow, cannot create as many jobs as the CSO, as the private sector. So we need to keep our eyes open to see what are the growth centers, what are the key sectors where jobs for young people are provided so that we link these people. Then the other is obviously building capacities. We talked about stigma and discrimination. This is one key area which is limiting access to opportunities for our young people. So opening the eyes for the private sector to be able to look at young people who are living with HIV positively and giving them equal access to opportunities is one area. And then the other is joint advocacy. Joint communication, shared communication with all the key sectors. We want to have one voice. Our ABC strategy has been a very, very powerful tool for us. Abstinence, promoting abstinence, being faithful and correct and consistent use of condoms has enabled us to deliver results. But again, we are still learning and we are still growing, so that's why we are here to learn from you.
Thank you so much. So what a detailed response with lots of rich insight. He talked, the message I got was really collaboration from the very start. And at the end, he emphasized again that it's about teamwork. If you work together for the same goal as a team, you're able to do that. What other issues did I pick up? How they worked. Again, he also brought in the community, the education re-entry programs, a whole lot. Again, I wish we had so much more time, but I'm so glad the summaries are actually telling us what we need to focus on. Let me move on to our last presenter. Give her an opportunity as well, because we want to open up and get into the discussions with you and you actually asking your questions. Thank you. Once again, a hand for him, if we may. So our final panelists, you also have about 3 minutes or so. Jerome Limo is the Executive Director of the Ambassador for Youth and Adolescent Reproductive Health Program, AYARHEP, that's abbreviation, with nearly 7 years of experience in sexual reproductive health and HIV advocacy, community, national and regional, as well as global levels. She actively amplifies the voices of the young people, advocating for youth-led solutions through her roles on various boards, including the National Network of People Living with HIV in Kenya, the National Network of Young People Living with HIV, the National Network of TB Champions, Young Women HIV Prevention Council hosted by AVAC. Jerome also chairs the Dual Prevention Pill Civil Society Advocacy Group, championing youth and young women's leadership in achieving impactful change. We really have a fantastic panel today. What do I have for you that we want you to focus on? As a leader of an organization advocating for SRHR, what are the key challenges young people face in accessing comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services, and how can these be targeted with others? Let me just quickly look at the other areas that you might touch on in your response so that we are comprehensive. How does the AYARHEP work with the governments? He told us about collaborations, international organizations to advocate for stronger SRHR policies and programs for adolescents and young women living with HIV. And in your view, what role does peer-to-peer education play in addressing the triple threats, and how can organizations like yours scale these efforts across Africa? Once again, briefly summarize what you think really needs to happen in those areas for the sake of our audience. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, just to also really build up on what my colleagues have said today is to think about what the context is right now, and Dr. Ruth has highlighted the numbers and where the triple threat conversation really started from. First is to highlight that these are issues that are intersecting, and for the longest time, even at service delivery point, they have been addressed separately. So one of the challenges for me, and even for many adolescents and young people in Kenya, but also in our countries in Africa, is the health service delivery system, where you have one room, a different clinician giving you contraceptives, you'll go to another and they will do intimate partner violence screening, and you go to another and then you will be given your ARVs. All these are diverse health systems. And for young people, we all know navigating these systems can be challenging, right? I will go for my ARVs and I'm expected to go and get contraceptives the other side of the facility, or go to the other side and meet a counselor. That can be hectic. So for me, one of those challenges is our complicated health systems that exist for various reasons, but continue to hinder young people from accessing these services. A key also other challenge that cuts across our countries is availability and accessibility of services. Trevor mentioned youth-friendly services, which have been a huge conversation for us adolescents and young people. Every room we walk into, we talk about youth-friendly services. We need youth-friendly services. And for me, what that looks like is a provision of quality healthcare, not only in terms of service, but availability of products and commodities that young people require, which has proven to be a huge challenge in our country. Accessing contraceptives, accessing ARVs sometimes because of stockouts, but also accessing comprehensive GBV support for survivors of gender-based violence has also been an issue. So looking at the service delivery system, but also availability of services. And Rogers mentioned, you know, our clinicians, our healthcare providers who are a bit overwhelmed, who are not able to offer quality and comprehensive services and spend time with us in those rooms. So for me, it is also the health resource, the resources that we have, our clinicians who are expected to serve a huge number of young people and communities. but in very short time. So our health service delivery system in its whole self is also a huge issue. But also lack of awareness and information. I constantly say that we assume HIV and reproductive health is normal, but the truth is it's normal for us. In this space, HIV is normal. When we're in these rooms, we can talk about HIV and be loud about it, but to many people, HIV is still that disease. It is still a killer disease, it is still scary, it is still the end of life for so many people. So for me, it is the lack of awareness, but also spaces that young people are able to access comprehensive and correct information around reproductive health, around teenage pregnancy, around where to access these services, because for one to be able to make an informed choice, they have to have knowledge and skills. And we all know that women and girls lack the ability to be able to even negotiate for safe sex, to even say, I have a condom, let's use a condom, and this is how you wear it, and even to even carry it, because it's considered you are quote promiscuous, right? So for me, it is the ability and the power to enable adolescents and young people to be able to access this information. How can we look at this? For me, it is three things. One, multisectoral, but also multilateralism and movement building. As countries coming together and harmonizing our efforts and looking at these issues jointly will get us somewhere. Because the same issues are happening in Kenya, the same issues are going on in Uganda, and the same issues are going in our respective countries. So coming and putting our efforts together and advocating together gets us actually somewhere. But movement building, because since the beginning, at the center of this whole circle of triple threat is people. It's communities, it's adolescents and young people, and not just the numbers that we talk about. So ensuring that it is a youth-led response, ensuring that it is governments and leaders and organizations working with young people, and not just for young people, right? Ensuring that young people have the ability and the space to be able to design, to implement, to rethink, to review programs that are really supposed to be able to look at their issues, but also policies. For the longest time, we hear a policy was passed, it was designed, but that policy is supposed to address my needs, but I was not in that room. So ensuring that the people who are meant to be served by these policies are actually in the room when these policies are designed. As I conclude, when I think about the peer-to-peer model, I was a peer educator, started as a peer educator, and I know Trevor also started as a peer educator, and many of the young people in this room today are peer educators. It is giving the opportunity of the shoe wearer to be able to reach a fellow shoe wearer. Because unfortunately, if you don't wear the shoe, then you won't understand where it pinches, right? So providing an opportunity for young people to reach out to their young people, to reach out to their peers, to empower them, but also really to be the linkage between the community and the services and the facilities and the clinicians. And that brings me to what Rogers mentioned, investing in community service delivery systems, and that is where the peer-to-peer model exists. So it is documenting the impact of the peer-to-peer model, asking governments to really invest in sustaining the peer-to-peer model, but majorly talking about the amazing work that adolescents and young people as peer educators, community health promoters continue to undertake in our communities.
Thank you so much. I think it needs to be louder than that. Thank you so very much. Excellent. Again, I'm so impressed by the confidence our young people have articulating those needs. What I took home really is, first of all, she really acknowledges the context as was presented by our first presenter. And of course, once again, the collaboration issue comes out, but she really highlighted the fact that the youth have got to lead this. She went on to talk of the policy development. I touched on it at the very beginning where we're saying the youth have got to be part of advocating for and making sure they are part of developing and putting in place the right policies that affect them. I could go on and on. And of course, you also talked about lack of information. If you don't have the information, how are you going to be able to do what you need to do? So thank you so much. I could go on. I can't summarize it all because she really was on point. Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard from our very brilliant panelists, a wealth of information that has come out of them. Try to summarize here and there, but I'm hoping you were listening. We are now on time. I think we are about 5 minutes behind, but then again, we were also late in starting. Let me, at this point in time, thank our panelists for these really excellent presentations and discussions that they had for us. And another big round for all of them now. And let me now hand it over to my co-moderator to now take us into the interventions from the floor. You were listening, I hope, and let's hear from you now as we move on to finalize our program. Thank you, Dee.
Hi everyone, my name is Dee Mpafi from Lesotho. I'm with EGPAF. A senior youth ambassador with EGPAF and an advocate for young people. I'm so happy that the panelists here are saying things that we've been saying through the time we've been advocating for adolescent youth-friendly services and how we need to treat adolescents as individuals, not problems to be solved. And I'm really happy that we are here. So I'm going to moderate a session where I'll be asking you guys questions or having a discussion, and you also have a chance to ask our panelists questions if you have additions also and comments that you may have. So the first question I have is to the media, because without the media, then our information will still be not disseminated as we'd want it to be. What does the media think about the triple threat? And how do you think it's best to disseminate the information to young people who might not have Android phones for social media, that like we propose that we on social media, and other young people who are in the rural areas and who have barriers in terms of breaking the barriers of talking about sexual reproductive health, talking about GBV and things like that. Anyone in the media? Lionel? Anybody?
I think this. Let me move out from the speakers. Okay, my name is Wankumbu. I'm a media trained personnel, but not currently working in the media. And maybe I'll be louder. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, so my name is Wankum Simkonda. I work for BATA. I'm from Zambia. I'm trained in media, but not currently practicing. But what I know is that...
Sorry, if you come to the front, maybe okay. Then you can have your mic on. People can hear you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is Wankum Simkonda. I work for Pediatric Adolescent Treatment Africa. I'm trained in media and now working on the youth care project in Zambia. One thing I know based on the question that has been asked is that media personnel do not understand what we are discussing. As a result, the messaging becomes problematic. Just the way we want to reach out to the religious people, media personnel or journalists need the training in HIV and SRH so that they are able to put up messages that are specifically tailored to the audience or to the people that we want to reach out to. Failure to which the designing of content by the media or the writing of these articles will be misplaced. So for me, I feel that we really need to target the media people and train them. Just like, for instance, what we are doing on the youth care project, we are training the religious leaders as well as the journalists so that they have an understanding of what SRH is, what HIV is, what family planning is, so that when they are messaging, because these media people are role models in the communities, so when they speak and do this targeted information, then really we are going to have the message reach the right audience. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much about that. I'm glad that media people are also interested in passing the message on triple threat, as we all know that we have problems with our young people having conversations with their parents or older people about having safe sex or GBV, especially boys. I'm glad that we have male on the panelists talking about how we can approach young men and men in general in terms of health systems and health services. As they are neglected, boys also need to be empowered because they are also victims. And most of the time, if I may say, we mostly see GBV as women and children-based violence. But men are also part of it. Men are abused, but they never talk about it. Men are abused, they report it, and people laugh at them that they are not men enough because of the gender norms. So, to my young people on the floor, do you have any question or a comment on the triple threat? I would like to give you opportunity to comment or ask a question if you may. Anybody?
So mine is likely twofold. I'm going to ask the adolescents, youth over here. Do you need resources? And when I talk about resources, it's of course money. Do you need that to make sure that your work runs? That's what I expected. So, sorry, I say twofold. Now, for the two of you, we know there's a transition going on. A global fund, PEPFAR funds are reducing, especially for HIV, because we're talking about climate change right now, pandemic preparedness, etc. What are you doing within your ministerial role to ensure that there is funding for this kind of efforts to be continued and we move from donor reliance, which is really a big issue right now?
Yes, I'll just say briefly for Uganda. We have a national strategic plan for ending HIV/AIDS, which has been running, which runs every 5 years. And under that plan, we have a resource mobilization strategy. So one of the things is to create accountability frameworks for all the key partners who are working in the HIV and AIDS space, but also in the teenage pregnancy and ending child marriage space. So we want to say that there is actually value for money. It's not absence or reduction in funding, but we are seeing a lot of inefficiencies across the board. Inefficiencies from partners who are duplicating programs and interventions on those who are actually targeting the same people. One of the critical challenges we had with HIV programming in Uganda is actually client duplication. So our data doesn't have unique identifiers. So one person is being served by more than one or two partners, and that is actually inefficient. So we're trying to develop a single registry for all our partners, for all our clients under the social protection programs, so that we get the right support going to the right individual. So that is one, creating efficiencies within the current system, creating an accountability framework for the resources that have been mobilized from development partners, CSOs, and private sector to invest in the HIV and AIDS space. And the other is placing HIV as a national level issue. What does that mean? It means that our advocacy, our engagement with the highest level of officers, that is the President's office, the First Lady, to fast track ending child marriage and pregnancy is important, because they have the power to really advocate and influence what finances are being put into the triple threat. The other is using on SGBV, working innovatively to have special court sessions for SGBV cases. These are happening in Uganda. So we have this high court circuit where we have time allocated and space for handling these issues. That is already sending a reminder to the perpetrators that SGBV is a critical issue that is being given adequate attention, just like all the other critical cases, like political cases and land cases, because this is what has been happening. Civil cases had taken root And SGBV was like something which is minor. So having high court sessions on top of the other circuits is very important. So we mainstream that, and that way we will reduce the resource burden. The other is obviously focusing on prevention, because we believe that we can, it's like having a bottomless pit. I mean, you're putting funds year in, year out, addressing interventions for care and for care and protection or care and treatment services. I think our main aim should be refocusing all our strategies to preventing SGBV, preventing preventing HIV transmission, but also preventing teenage pregnancies. I think we can have more wins or more value for money, or we reduce the cost of care and treatment options, reduce costs for victim support if we focus more on the preventive side, because we can't have a limit to how much we can bring on, because it's like a train moving round and round. So we must put that stop, and that stop is really putting more money in prevention, and in the long run we shall see. But on the whole, resources are coming down across the board, not only in programs that we have, but also even infrastructural programs, you see.
Yeah.
So it's not just the social protection programs, but across the board. So we have to work smartly, we have to integrate interventions. When we're training health workers, we must train community development officers. We must use that time to also train political leaders. Yeah. So integrating interventions working together enables us to reduce the expenses that we've been having.
Thank you.
Then the other is innovation. We have to use ICT. People should seek services using the devices that you have. Mental health and psychological support. We have AI chatbots for mental health in Uganda, where someone can actually interact with an AI, and then that AI provision can link to now a human face to be able to deliver a service.
Thank you so much, Rogers. I think the topic is burning. I wish we had the whole day, but time is not on our side. Can a young person that the question was asked, can you just give us like a brief summary of your answer, like a minute?
Okay, thank you so much. This is a very exciting discussion. So returning to what Rogers just said, when you look at our AIDS budget spending in Uganda, you see that we are investing very less in HIV prevention, and yet we are having these conversations. So the call is for us to reorganize our resources to actually put more resource on HIV prevention. And then you mentioned about, do we have enough resources? So I would just like to allude to what we did this year. As young people in AHF Uganda, we wrote a policy paper to the HIV/AIDS Committee Parliament on local funding. So we realized our budget on HIV/AIDS is 85% externally funded and only 15% internally funded. So we wrote a paper to them explaining, because there are some sort of laws that the government had put in that we can collect resources domestically, but that is not being done. So we were holding them accountable in a way to mobilize resources internally, so that yes, we can also have resources, so that, for example, when external funders pull out, what will happen to the response? So that is a way. Then another thing we've done is now delivering through partnerships. He has mentioned duplication of HIV programs. Everyone is doing almost the same thing. Can we come together and deliver through partnerships? If you're doing something, can we work together? Can you complement what I'm doing? Can I complement what you're doing? So these are the different strategies we've tried to use to cover up for the resources and push for HIV prevention.
Thank you so much, Trevor. Okay, I know we have so many questions and so many comments, but I would like to give a comment to, I would like to ask a question to Chip, who is the president of Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. Sorry to put you on the spotlight, but you are here. Hi. So, Chip, what do you think of the triple threat that is all over Africa? I know that you have been in this foundation for a very long time, and this is what we've been talking about all the time: teenage pregnancy, new infections, Teenage pregnancies means high mortality rate for children, as a child cannot protect a child from HIV when they cannot take care of themselves, as they are children as well.
Thank you, Dee. Good morning, everyone. I am just in the short time that I've been here, very impressed by what I've heard, frankly. And so I don't know that I have too much to add that you don't already know. But the comments, forgive me, is it Mr. Trevor? I don't have much to add to what you said. Relying on community, talking about integration, holding government accountable. I may have been working on some of these issues a little bit longer. I'm going to guess, and I'm sure Dr. Mahompa is not going to fight with me on this. I'm the oldest person in the room. You'll fight. I know you fight, Agnes, but not on that question. My point is to be in a room with you, your voices, your ages, where you've identified the key issues that I'm hearing, including from the other colleague from Uganda. This is kind of the best of times and the worst of times. And by that I mean there really is the concern about reduced resources from the Global Fund and from. We work at the Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. I'm based in Washington, D.C. We are nearly constantly at work on helping to get PEPFAR reauthorized, extend its life as a program and its funding. But at the same time, after 20, 25 years, it must be the case that the government of Kenya spends more than 15%, provides more than 15% of the resources for the response. And so you identifying that as an issue, speaking to it, not just talking about it in a workshop, but sending a letter, having others sign it, and so on. It's that kind of step-by-step advocacy with other partners. Don't go alone. Bring as many with you, as many diverse points of view and communities with you. We've been pretty good, I would say, in the HIV and AIDS response with supplies over many years. What I mean by supplies, Washington, Geneva, New York, they're very good at supplying ideas, strategies, policies, funding, ARVs, lenacapavir from the private sector. I don't know that we've been as good at creating the demand on the other side. And what you represent, Mr. Trevor, to me, is demand. The voices from the community, from men as well as women, that are speaking to elected representatives, neighbors, parents, the media. You're doing what you should be doing. The challenge is consistency. Just keep going. Bring more people into these discussions. Figure out what would it take to have 4 times as many people in this room, including from the media, including elected official, so they're part of the kind of conversation that you're having. I was here when devolution, the first time devolution occurred, the first election, and I'm not far in another hotel reception, and I remember asking how many women governors were elected. The answer was 0 at that time. When I was reading through the preparation for the materials, Her Excellency Governor Wanga, those words were what popped out at me first from the sort of background paper. Having more women in important leadership positions just strikes me as a big advance of the perspective that they would bring. Their empathy, I would hope, I don't know, Her Excellency myself, I shouldn't assume a point of view based on a gender, and I'm not trying to do that, but I think the more women at the table, including in leadership positions, is a tremendous stride forward. What we can't forget is how much progress has been made. And it's always a challenging thing in messaging. Consider the progress, not just in Homa Bay, but Homa Bay is indicative of Kenya, as far as we've been working. I'm very proud of the work that we've supported in Homa Bay over the years. Tremendous progress, but a lot of audiences only hear tremendous progress and then they conclude, okay, it's done. And it's not done, as everybody in this room knows. So recognize that you and we have a fundamental communications challenge, success, 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 but we have a whole host of issues for the next phase, for the next 5 years. And what I mean by the best of times is we have the best tools we've ever had: prevention, prep, testing, and treatment. 5 years ago, we couldn't have dreamed about a twice-a-year shot like lenacapavir. So draw faith and encouragement and strength from the progress that has been made. You clearly have already identified the issues that are most appropriate, I think, in Kenya. And you just have to keep going and going and going. But I take heart at just how savvy and informed and experienced, and I assume by extension everyone is in this room, because we're going to have to understand and have ideas. How do we sustain the progress that we've made, make further advances on 50 or 60 cents on the dollar? What I mean by that is if there's a reduction in Global Fund sourced funding or PEPFAR sourced funding, we may not have the same level of funding over the next 5 years. Efficiencies, sir, the gentleman from Uganda, that's a generalized word, but you're 100% right. If we don't have, everywhere we've had $1 before to do prevention, testing, and treatment, what if we only have 50 or 60 cents instead of $1? How are we going to use that? How do we leverage that? That could be the reality over the next 5 years. So we see it coming. Let's think that through. There are integration of services has to be a part of that answer. But I just, from everything I hear, you guys have it in your heads, you have it in your articulation, you have it in your hands. I feel like you are absolutely in the right place, right places, going in the right directions, and just wish you very well. Unless there's a vaccine, unless there's a cure, we have to be doing exactly this today, next year, 3 years, 5 years. And on the demand side, political demand that our elected leaders are responsive to issues that matter most to communities of young people, young parents, and the larger Kenyan society. Thank you, Dee, for asking the question.
Thank you so much, Chip. That was a summary of our event. And as to wrap up, so many things has been said. And I just want us to say we want to get involved as young people, but what happens after being involved? What happens after we leave from these meetings, from talking to policymakers? Are we sitting at the seat back and just say we want to get involved, but we never volunteer to say, where can I help? I think it's time we stand up and say, where can I help? Not just say, I want to be involved in a meeting. So thank you so much, everybody, for being here and making time to attend this meeting today. I would want to thank the sponsors, like we did thank them and acknowledge them at the beginning of this session. That is Elizabeth Kaiser Pediatric AIDS Foundation, EGPAF, Africa Reach, and AHF, AIDS Healthcare. Thank you so much. Can we gather to have a group photo? Then after that, we'll have breakfast together and network and try to know each other. And like we talked about collaborations, this time we talk about how we can help each other as Africa, because triple threat is in all the African countries. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take our first photo, will be the panelists. And then after that, we'll invite everybody, please, to join us for a group photo. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys. 1, 2, 3. You guys are done? Okay.
Thank you.